Hi everyone, just a quick intro. I'm Mendo Kichi and I do cosplays and make my own costumes. If you're new here, please check out my Instagram for more cosplay related content. Also, please subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys how I made my Jolyne Cujoh cosplay. This will be a two-part video, so watch out for the part 2. Before cutting out the pieces of my costume, I made this mock-up using my bodice pattern and a tight-fitting skirt as a reference. I used the actual leather fabric for the mock-up since I want to try how it will behave when worn. I also sewed a ribbon trim just to see if it works out with the leather. For the skirt, I cut out this underwear shape on a stretchy fabric. I decided to add this part on my skirt to secure it in place when I wear it because I noticed from the mock-up that the skirt is too short and it can easily be lifted or pulled down, which I don't want to happen while wearing the skirt. To attach this part on the skirt, I made a pattern for the facings. I cut out the pieces for the facings and the skirt body. I made the pattern for the skirt using a tight-fitting skirt that I have as reference. I just added a slit on where I thought it should be. Next is I drew out how I want the web thingy detail to look like on the skirt, and then I traced it on the leather piece. I used an erasable white pen for this. This is how it looked like. The next thing I did is I sewed the white ribbon on the horizontal lines that I drew. I sewed all the horizontal lines first before sewing the vertical ones because I used the vertical ones to cover up the edges of the horizontal lines. I hope it makes sense. The edges of the vertical lines will be hidden on the binding that I did later on this video. I made sure to sew on both sides of the ribbon. My ribbon is around 1/8 inch wide and it looks better when sewed on both sides. The next thing I did is I sewed leather strips on the edge of the skirt. And this will be the binding that I was talking about earlier. This is basically just a 2-inch wide strip and the length is the same as the edges that I covered. After sewing this binding, I folded it just to see how the skirt will look like. I used my hairpins to temporarily pin them in place. I also tried if I can sew them as it is, but it didn't work out well, so I decided to use this contact cement, also called rugby here. It's basically a super strong glue with a very strong smell as well, so keep it away from kids. It works by putting it on the surface of both parts that you want to stick together and then waiting it to dry a little before actually sticking them together. Oh, and I am using an old paintbrush to apply it evenly on the surface. When folding the parts together, it's best to hammer them down or put weights on top just to make sure that everything is sticking together. After folding the front binding on the skirt, I flipped it to fold again. I secured the folded parts with a clip that I bought, which works better than the hairpins. I repeated the process of putting the glue on my skirt until all sides have already been glued and folded. After this, I sewed along the binding to secure the folds. This was pretty hard to sew since the leather fabric has piled into so many layers and my sewing machine is not for heavy duty. And then I sewed the front and back pieces of the skirt together. Again, it was a struggle to sew so many leather fabrics together. Now let's go back to the facings that I cut. I sewed them together right sides facing each other. I also sewed the underwear part and added elastic on the holes for the thighs. This is how it looked. It's ugly, but it works really well and no one can see it since it's under the skirt, so I also don't mind. The next thing I did is I pinned it with the facing, and then I attached the facing with the skirt body, right sides facing together. After that, I was supposed to sew the underwear and facing together, but my sewing machine just couldn't do it. And I didn't want to break it, so I decided to hand sew that part. I don't know what this stitch is called, but I also did this stitch in my Victorian Sophie dress. I'm almost done with the skirt. I just added this detail on the center of the skirt. It says Jo for Jolyne and Jotaro and Joseph and Jonathan and Josuke. Not for Jorno though. Just kidding. This is how the skirt looks like. And I forgot to show you how I added the elastic at the back of my skirt. So basically, I added this elastic just to help the skirt hug my body better. I attached it in between the facing and the back panel of the skirt. I also sewed it on the sides to secure it. And the skirt is done. Watch out for the part 2 where I'll show you guys how I made the top. If you're curious to see the results, you can check out the photos of my Jolyne cosplay on my Instagram account. Be sure to follow and subscribe.